I said before that we're in the midst of a housing crisis. I think everyone acknowledges that. And we're told it repeatedly by government and social welfare bodies. Now, I don't doubt them, although I have laid out previously that the blame for the current problem almost lies exclusively with all the bureaucrats and politicians who implement housing policy in this country. I mean, they've made development difficult. They've skewed markets through interventions, and they continue to make things tougher for investors, for renters, and for owner-occupiers. They've been doing it for decades, though, through various grants and incentives that ultimately only drive house prices up. Now, I remember back in the dark days of when I was a politician, discussing the removal of these incentives with a person who ultimately became Prime Minister. Now, at the time, he was responsible for housing policy, and he admitted that removing these incentives would cause house prices to fall by more than the grant amounts, thereby making housing more affordable. Well, that wasn't the aim, even though it was a stated goal, because he told me it wasn't politically palatable to do it. You see the conundrum? More affordable housing is not what the politicians really want. Instead, the pressure was actually put on to increase the handouts, thereby making the problem even worse. And it continues today. But such stupidity, I mean, we're not surprised by it. It's not unknown in politics, is it? But recent policy decisions have hit new levels of, how can I put this politely, counterproductivity. Remember, the government's own words are that we are in a housing crisis, both in terms of affordability and availability. But that's not surprising when you consider recent research from the team at the Institute of Public Affairs. You see, on the government's own figures, over the next 5 years, we can expect 1.75 million more migrants to be calling Australia home. Now, that's predicted to result in a housing supply shortfall of 252,800 units. So they're making the problem worse. And almost 2/3 of this year's and next year's migrant intake, that's around 600,000 people in total, are international students. And the IPA, the Institute of Public Affairs, found in Australia's capital cities where most international students reside, the percentage of international students to new housing supply was as follows in the financial year 2023. They put this note there: greater than 100% indicates international students occupied an equivalent to all the new housing supply available, as well as consuming some of the existing supply. Here are the figures: Melbourne, 80%, Sydney, 147%, Brisbane, 57%, Perth, 63%, Adelaide, 89%, Hobart, 103%, Darwin, 140%, and Canberra, 55%. Let me make this even clearer for you. The international students that governments are bringing in are taking up more than all the new housing supply in cities like Sydney, Hobart, and Darwin. And they're taking over more than half of all new housing in every other capital city. Do you really have to wonder why rents are going up and why there are queues of people for every single vacancy? Now, I just mentioned in my earlier statements how compromised and substandard our diploma mills are in this country. And yet our government seems to be putting their tax-free profits and the backdoor ticket to permanent residency they provide ahead of Aussies being able to put a roof over their heads. This is an abject disgrace.